all Valve Games maps have been made using some version of a mapping editor called Hammer. It is very old and very prone to breaking things in ways no one knew scientifically plausible. I can't wait to load into my own map, and then, I load into it, and then immediately it's gonna be like, oh, there's a giant bug. I love making maps.
Hello? Hi.
In the actual editor itself, maps are made using a combination of brushes, displacements, and props. Okay, there are like so many other things that go into it, but I'm simplifying it because I do not want to make 100 episodes trying to explain things that I still don't fully understand myself. A brush is a convex 3D shape which defines the shape of the world in visibility. It's important to note that if you ever make a concave brush, you will have a lot of problems. Just don't you can't, it's not possible. Just fake it till you make it, okay? A displacement is a brush whose surfaces have been converted to a mesh of triangular polygons which can be freely distorted and sculpted into various shapes. If you've ever seen a cliff or a hill in a Source game, yeah, it's made of displacements because it is very difficult to get these types of geometry with brushes that look like this. You can try, you might get close, but it's just easier to make a displacement. Props are models. I'm not giving a definition beyond that. Fun fact, if you enable SV-Cheats 1 in the console, and you use a few special console commands, you can see how much a map is made of any one of these. And it really opens your eyes to just how much of a map is either a displacement, prop, brush, etc. Usually based on the time period that a map was made, it'll be leaning more one way than another, but regardless, it's still really cool. Or you can peer into the void, or find out that Thunder Mountain has a fucking train in it. I've played this game for like over a decade, and I've never seen this. Wait, what? After about 2 hours, I had a bridge, and then it was already time to take a break and fulfill my other obligations. It was really fun, and I highly recommend, if you enjoy any of this series, to watch parts of the jam stream that coincided with the TF2 jam itself. I'll link that in the description, because it was thoroughly enjoyable, and I had a great time. After top scoring in TF2 Classic, it was back to the level editor, where I felt like I was making pretty good progress for how long I had been mapping, which was about 2 hours at this point. I had a bridge, and it was Brooklyn bridging to the chorus. Now all I had to do was the rest of the map, which ended up being a lot harder than I thought. See, it turns out all of that planning was actually for nothing, because apparently, I'm a fucking dumbass! So in my original idea, I had sort of wanted a crossover part of the map. A crossover is a section in Payload Race where both payload carts cross over the same area of track, and the game denotes this with a bunch of logic and entities, and it looks like this. Turns out, these aren't able to be used on rotationally symmetrical maps, because, well, think about it. How would it work? The tracks would end up looping on each other, and the map wouldn't end up being symmetrical, or you would have a payload cart that could not physically make it to the end of the map. Which, to absolutely no one's surprise, is why you only find crossovers on maps made with mirrored symmetry, unlike the map that I was making, but wanted to put a crossover on. Imagine, if you will, a snowball rolling down a hill. As it travels further, it will either fizzle out into nothing and never amount to a problem, or alternatively, it gathers more and more snow, rocks, branches, whatever that accumulates into this snowball, until it inevitably picks up speed and begins to tumble, causing what many in the business like to call a situation. This was my snowball, and I wasn't ready for the snowball fight I was about to get into. Everyone has their little trick for what they do when they get stuck. When I get stuck with something like drawing, for example, I start drawing something I've drawn many times before to help me remember how to do the thing I'm struggling with right now. In level design, I've heard many attest to the fact that just laying the track of the payload cart can help you visualize where the cart is going to be traveling and build around it. But for some reason, laying the track was just incredibly difficult for me, and this was mainly because I didn't really know how I wanted the map to start. So if I tried to work backwards from the ending, I would just end up getting stuck from the other end, because I knew that I wanted the cart to end up at the top of the bridge, but I had no concept of how I wanted that to happen. So I'm stuck in two directions. Let's add a third, fuck it. I didn't know for the life of me how to solve this massive height variation between the bridge and the chasm. In Badwater Basin, This structure that overlooks the second point, it's a very famous part of the map. Everyone knows this part. But do you know how many hammer units tall it is? For reference, this orange crate and hammer is 64 units tall, and you take fall damage in Team Fortress 2 after walking off of heights higher than 256 hammer units, which, if you remember, you do when falling off of this in Badwater Basin. So, take a guess. If you said 320 hammer units tall,
Good job.
my bridge was twice that in height. In fact, the bridge that I had made was taller than the platform on Hightower, which was the inspiration for this structure in the first place. So in shooting for the moon, I'm currently passing Neptune. I guess in hindsight, now knowing these numbers, it makes so much sense why I was struggling to connect these two areas. It's because most maps in TF2 don't do things like this, so I didn't have something to easily point to and emulate in my map. A lot of maps are made from the inspiration of other maps. It's why sometimes you can just tell what maps someone enjoys by the maps that they end up making, especially when someone is starting out. Oftentimes, people's first maps end up being an accidental recreation or reinterpretation of a map that they're very intimately familiar with, the map that they tend to enjoy the most. In another project that I had worked on prior this year, I had struggled in connecting this yard area between 2 points of interest in the map, and then I was reminded by a friend that the map Yukon exists, which was a similar theme and a similar game mode to the one that I was making this map for. I ended up loading up the map myself, looked around it a bit, and just got struck with this idea in my head, and I was able to instantly crank out this new and improved yard area once I had gone back to Hammer after running around the map for just a few minutes. Seeing what I was trying to do be done in a far better, more sensible, and oftentimes simpler way meant that I could just go back to my map and basically Control-C, Control-V, but not actually, because that's fucking stealing. I just did it myself. I did this brushwork myself. Even now, with my 72-hour mapping project, I was aiming to make some kind of hodgepodge of Hightower and Nightfall, because those were my two favorite payload race maps for completely different reasons. I love the openness and brightness of Hightower, and at times how chaotic it was. But I also loved how Nightfall had sections that were very close quarters and on the cart path, meaning that parts of the map would definitely see action for classes like, well, you know the one that matters to me, classes like Engineer. I mean, come on, we love Engineer in this house. Neither of those maps had this. The closest thing to it was this, but this is small potatoes to what I'm doing. Eventually, since my idea was costing me a lot of time, something that's not really great in a 72-hour event, you know, where I have a deadline, I had to make a rather difficult decision. Despite going through over a dozen separate versions, this was all that sat in front of me. All of my map was right here. So I opened up a new VMF, titled it something different, and started from zero, 12 hours into day one of the jam. Don't be overly attached to an idea, especially in level design. I don't know what possessed me to make this specific brush bridge be the hill that I died on for my map for 12 hours, but I tried so much to make it work, except changing the idea, the bridge. I didn't try lowering it, shortening it, not having it be at this 45-degree angle at all. All of this stubbornness just for me to end up incredibly stressed, tired, and exhausted, and with no map at the end of it anyways. So, I passed out. Angrily. When I woke up, I opened my new file, which I had made the night before, which only consisted of the basics, game mode logic, some skybox settings, and started my map again from essentially scratch. I knew I was doomed to repeat my mistakes if I took the same approach again, so rather than waste another 12 hours, I took what I learned from what didn't work and made sure to do something different. Starting with the center of my map again, I made a bridge. It was drastically reined in, however. But it's still a very admirable bridge, even if it's a fraction of the length, width, and height of its predecessor. And in sticking with change, I also finally made the decision to switch from a map that used rotational symmetry to mirrored symmetry. Because I placed this crossover on the bridge, and when I made it, it looked kind of nice, and I didn't want to get rid of it. It just kind of like fit, and I really liked how it felt, really honestly. I think it just really brings the whole thing together, and I would feel bad if I got rid of it. Yeah, and then I kind of blacked out, whited out, greened out, which I didn't even know you could do. And after about 10 hours of flow-based mapping from there, I guess the rest of the map sort of materialized around after that. I didn't really record much of the process, but I did record myself running around it afterwards, so here's a brief overview of what I had about 36 hours into the jam. Okay, so this is me. This is like me recording this way later, so this isn't me like during the jam or anything. I'm just gonna make that clear. This was the first part of the map I made, period. This was like the first area in the entire thing. I then worked out from this area to each side because I said this in the original video that I kind of branch out from the areas that I make. So I'll make an area and then I'll connect. Oh, how does this connect to the bridge? Well, how does the bridge connect to this rest of this map? I guess there'd be a building here. It feels like there'd be a building here. And I just kind of like progressively work my way deeper and deeper into the map until I feel like I've made it to the spawn rooms. And it turns out that, yeah, my map may have ended up being a little overscaled. I don't know what I was thinking putting a window here, because that is very clearly a sight line. I must just not have cared. But rather than going in the order of areas I made, I figured it'd probably just be best to go from the cart path and kind of tour around the map that way. The reason the map is named Sisyphus is not actually for, like, the meme entirely or the downhill section. The reason I named it Sisyphus is because I wanted it to be a map where you ended up back where you started, like the cycle going again. And I put the hill there because, like, oh, Sisyphus meme, you go down the hill, whoa, it's like you're going back to the beginning again, ah ha ha ha. But the real reason was because I'd wanted the ending of the payload track to be where the start of the other team's cart was, and it'd kind of be like this cyclical nature of like, oh, now you've got to push the cart all the way back up the hill, it's an infinite loop, it's a closed circuit. But, I'll talk about it later. It kind of worked, but not really, not really. So we're coming up now on this nice little bridge here. Nice, silly little bridge. Beautiful crossover section that may or may not be completely broken. Allegedly. But, I'd made this middle building so that soldiers and a bunch of different classes could get on top of it and have a silly little time being all the way up here, you know, playing on top of this building. I'd mentioned that I don't like when areas are clipped off needlessly, and I tried making it really clear what buildings you could and couldn't get on top of. Although, in the first playtest, no one ever used this part of the building because no one realized it was playable because it was so high up. But a lot of people were using this part. And something that was really cool that I didn't even realize is that because I used like a smaller fence here, it meant that scouts and pyros and some classes were able to use like some movement mechanics to make it up to this fence and then make it up to the top fence and then also get access to the roof, which I didn't entirely intend, but you know, it ended up kind of happening that way. So that was cool. As we get past to the open courtyard area there, we get to this more enclosed area. I tried making this map to have two initial like choke areas. I'd wanted this area to be like a place the cart would get holed up for a bit, and then I wanted the ending portion to be another place the cart would get holed up for a bit. So I put a big ammo there. I put a lot of routes here for defenders to try to make it so they could like defend this place. I put this weird spiral building that's actually like pretty cool. It's got a lot of stuff going on. It's got this little ledge up here. There's a full ammo there. If you build a sentry here, it actually covers the entire area, ironically, except for the area right below it, which is where the cart is coming in from, so that was a bit of an oversight. And then there's this, like, super cool flank route down here. When I had made this area, I didn't know how I would connect, like, this originally just dead-ended here. And it kind of felt awkward, because, like, you have to go under the bridge to get to the rest of the map. So I was like, well, I want to put a route here. And I had this building up here, and I looked at it on the, like, in the top-down view in Hammer, and I noticed that this area was, like, right in front of where this area was. So I made a tunnel, and then I made 256 high staircase up here, and I have this really cool fight with a bunch of height variation stuff in here that is also, like, kind of an important route, because it gets you to flank the cart. Whoa! So that was a fun little accident. As you can tell, there's not really much decoration because I'm lazy and I was tired, and I was very tired and lazy, and I made this in 72 hours. Actually less, because I kind of threw away the entire first day. But it was fun, it was fun. This portion here is a big rollback zone. This is where I wanted the cart to get stuck initially, but it didn't really end up working out. But that was okay. As we get up here, there's this little room here that kind of sucks and has a little health thing in here. I tried putting that there to make people go here. Didn't really work, but we'll get to that in a future video. This is the part that everyone really enjoyed about the map. This is the part where, for whatever reason, whenever the cart would get to this part, everyone would be like, oh my god, I love this map. This map's amazing. This is my favorite payload race map. This is actually pretty good. People just celebrating something, because I think they just haven't seen this done in like a payload race map before. It's a roll forward zone! Whoa! I don't know how to make the cart go faster, so this is as fast as it goes. Whoa! Yippee! Whoa! Boom! And then you go under the bridge, and we got a nice full health here because I thought it'd be funny to have a full health here. And I put water here because I didn't want people taking fall damage from dropping all the way up here. Well, like I just fucking did somehow. What? So I put this water here to kind of like make sure they don't take fall damage. And also, it's not deep enough, but in some areas it is deep enough that you can actually pyro shark. So that was cool. That was interesting. Now that we're getting down towards the more bottom part of the map, it's pretty much just a straight shot to the ending. Really, there's not really much more that goes into this. Overall, it's a bit big, but it is a pretty straightforward, simple layout. Because once you get outdoors, everything's just kind of super big and open. Trust me, that did make some sniper problems. We'll get to that. But, overall, for like an A1, it's probably one of the better first versions of a map I've ever made. And I'm still pretty proud of it, even though it's been like a couple weeks now since I originally made it. I don't know, it was fun making this map. And making the series is pretty fun too. There's not really much back here. I didn't know what to put here. Yeah, there's no explosion because I didn't know how to do that yet. And then there's this building here which has like health and ammo. I put one for each team because it's in the middle. Whoa! And then I guess I'll show off more of the spawn room a bit. Because the areas I didn't show off, there's this upper route here, which is just really straightforward. And then there's this staircase here. Well, I knew it was gonna be a staircase. Right now it's a ramp because I was lazy. And then there's this like lower building thing. I don't exactly know why I made this like an open gateway, but it felt cool, making it so you could drop down here. I don't know. Yeah, alright, I'm done. And with the layout in a fully playable state, it was time to playtest, feedback, and iterate. And maybe talk about some other stuff on the way too.